Hey there, and welcome again to the second edition of the Attraction Advantage. My name is Russ Laggan, and I am here with my favorite friend and counterpart on the East Coast of the US of A, Frank Panunto, VP of Growth East. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, Russell. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. How'd you like that intro? I've got to get better at this.
No, I think it's actually pretty good. I mean, listen, you make me sound like I'm something when we all know the truth. But no, I will tell you this: that I mean, listen, starting off, our schedules are like, you know how much momentum we have right now at EXP. That I mean, our phones are ringing off the hook. Our
Yeah.
conversations are crazy, and you know, two thumbs up to Leo for what he's doing out there, just leading the charge. And so to be able to kick our week off, spending some time with you, talking all
Yeah.
things growth and EXP is
Yeah.
not to sound cheesy, but it's actually like my favorite part of the week right now. I love this, man. So
Yeah.
it's good to see your face, brother.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I feel the same way. We do get so busy. It's just really taking the time to do the things that are important, which, it kind of dovetails with what we're doing with attraction too, because so many people are like, Ross, I'm just so busy selling houses. Like, I don't
Yeah.
have time for that. Right. So a lot of the stuff that we're talking about with attraction advantage is like making the time for the things that are important to you. I mean, that's half this mindset thing that we're working on also. Like, what really is important to you? And are you taking the time for it? I see people all the time, Frank, and I know you've seen this too. People like, my family's number one. And they're like, I'm working 90 hours a week. I'm like, that means your family's not number one, right? You can't make your family number one if you're working 90 hours a week. So it's a matter of getting your life and your priorities in alignment and getting really clear on what you want so that you have the ability every single day to figure out how to get stuff done. Listen, I fail all the time at that, but I do hit the mark a lot because I've got the things that are important to me, like making this happen today, super important, top of the list. I got 20 other things that could drag me sideways and make me cancel this, but man, we're making it happen, and I'm glad we do.
Well, I think and one of the coming episodes, we'll do your lifeline of a real estate agent,
Yeah,
that professional lifeline, which I think is brilliant. And there's a lot of truth in it. When you're in the beginning and you're just grinding, not even just the beginning. I don't care what part you are in your journey.
sure.
You can be spending so much time grinding, 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 and you talk about spending time. And look, man, I'm in my 50s, brother, so I'm looking at things a little bit differently than I did in my 20s when I started. I'm getting much more protective of my time and how I'm
Yeah,
spending it and what I want to do with that. So, when you look at the opportunities that we have here at this company, to not take advantage of that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And if
yeah,
you can still have the quality of life while you're generating income for your family, it's just such a no-brainer. And I think that's why it's important that you and I
yeah.
are talking about what we're talking about. That's important for us.
It's kind of funny because I think, after I turned 50, I'm 52 now, and the amount of shits that I have to give are far and fewer between.
Well, it's different, right?
Yeah. Like,
When
well,
you're in your
it's
20s,
fun.
your hair's on fire. You got the whole world in
Yeah,
front of you,
yeah,
and then you get into your 50s and you're on a, hey, look, I'm on a back nine, man. So the
yeah,
conversations, I say a lot more no's than I do
yeah,
yeses, which is as really
yeah,
freeing in a way. It kind of really makes you feel a lot better. You feel like the stuff that you're doing has so much
yeah,
more quality behind it. The
yeah.
time, the people, the conversations, and and it's pretty awesome. And I think, we think about our guest today, what he's done is amazing. And it's just, to show people what it looks like to be able to get to that level, I think is super important.
Agreed, agreed. And hey, let's just use that as a segue here. I love to say yes to the things that are moving the ball in the right direction, and I don't say yes to the things that don't now. So I'm
Yeah.
looking for reasons to say yes. I reached out to this guy, Adam Day, and this guy jumped right on. He's like, "Yes, absolutely, we're in." So Frank Panunto, today we have the one and only Adam Day. Jump on in here, Adam.
Hello, how are
Good,
you?
There
good
he
evening.
is.
Good evening to you.
Good evening.
All right, international expansion leader for Europe, Adam Day. You are based, I believe you told me you're based, what, 30 minutes north of London, England?
Yes, I'm in a little town called Hitchin, Hitchin. Look it up. It's like a 15th century, or we've got a 15th century church, 15th century buildings, and I think it dates back to the Doomsday in 1066 as well. It was mentioned in the Doomsday in my little town. So,
Wow,
yeah, it's 30 minutes into central London, so it's very close. That's
that is
great.
absolutely fantastic. When we're walking around the US of A, we're like, man, this city's old. This is 1700.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
nothing. You guys are like a bunch of youngins.
Exactly, exactly. I was in Rome in the summer. I mean, that place is ancient, isn't it? It's
Yes,
crazy.
yes, yes. That's
Beautiful.
That
Yeah.
stuff is always fascinating to me. So I get a kick out of all of it. So let's just dive right in here. So the podcast is Attraction Advantage. We talk about all things mindset, growth, and building. Building stuff, right? Because we've built companies and we've built teams and we're building all that stuff, and all of that stuff requires people. So give me a quick sketch of your history. How did you get to where you are now?
So I started this, we call it estate agency in the UK, not real estate. So I started an estate agency in 1997, straight out of school.
Yep.
Didn't know what to do with myself, landed in a role. In the UK, agents are salaried employed members of staff, right? So that's kind of how it's traditionally worked. So I was paid a stipend, I think you guys would call it, or a basic salary of $12,000 a year, £12,000 a year.
Yeah.
Maybe even less than that. Actually, might have been 6,000. I can't remember now. But and then a small amount of commission on top of that, a tiny amount of commission on top of that.
Yeah.
And I was born in '78, so I came out of school in sort of the late '90s, mid to late '90s, and this internet thing was happening. And so but I'd also been very used to using a pen and paper and a blackboard and a chalk, but then I was also very comfortable with the internet and these computers that had just started arriving on the scene. So I think I was in the perfect time to realize that real estate wasn't quite right in the UK, or probably anywhere. So I did that for 9 years with a little company called Country Properties, and then in 2006 I set up one of the first, we call them online estate agency businesses in the UK. So you could say a cloud-based estate agency business in the UK in 2006. So that was a very traditional way in terms of we employed people. It's the same as we do in the UK. But I had no offices. We had people working from home, and we grew that business for 7 or 8, 9 years. And I sold that business in 2015 to the largest property services company in the UK called the Connells Group. And that was 2015. That kind of got my infamy in the industry because that was the first acquisition of an online business, of an online estate agency business anywhere in the UK, probably the world, we think. And then I did a couple of disastrous jobs, terrible roles that I'd got a name for myself all of a sudden. So I was thrust into the limelight of working at board level at various companies, and they were too corporate for me. And then EXP came along, and then I got a contact from a guy in 2019, maybe 18, whenever it was, I can't remember now. And then went through the whole process, met with various people like Jason Gessing and Glenn Sanford, obviously, was the final sort of, tick in the box. And we launched EXP in the UK in November 2019 was the official launch date.
Fantastic. So how many people are in EXP UK now?
So we have just over 600 agents. We've just gone past that. We've got a small team of 17 staff, I think it is. But 600 agents. We're doing kind of 2,000 listings a month, well over 1,000, well, probably 1,400 sales a month. So we think we're the largest real estate brokerage or estate agency business in the UK as of, well, probably the last 3 or 4 weeks. We've just got into number 1 spot, estate agency brand in the UK. So we're still growing. It's still going crazy.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. I mean, it's like, how do you guys measure that there? Like in the US, we've got all these aggregators of information that measure that. Who's the measuring stick there?
We measure, so a lot of the UK stuff, none of it's done by agent count. We've never ever been, judged on agent count in the UK. It's always been by listing numbers and sales. Transactions. So we have a few data points here. We've got a company called 20EA who measure that, and I log in every day to see where we are, and we just keep moving up the list. And 3 months ago, we were the 4th largest estate agency brand, and as of, let's say, in August, we were the largest. I'd like to see us the largest for a whole quarter before I start, shouting from the rooftop too much, because it's a bit like that. We've just gone into first place, so we could easily just fall back if some other brokerage has a good month or so. But at the moment, month to date in September, we're still the largest as well. So looking good.
Yeah. So you're gonna wait. You're gonna wait a couple months.
I'm sorry, Russ. Yeah, we say it all the time. Like there's no better attractor than production. So when you're tracking those numbers and getting that momentum, especially we're talking about an area in the market where nobody knows us, right? It's new. You're in an infant stage, and you're trying to establish that name, and to have that kind of production that quickly is awesome. So congrats to you and everybody there.
Yeah, I agree. Production, I didn't know whether 5 years ago, look, I'd never done this kind of model in the UK before, and I learned from some great people, Rich Tomasini and AJ Meada and various others, Brent Gove obviously, and learnt the model as much as I could, and then translated it into the UK as close as I could, but making sure that we anglicized it and had various boundaries in place. We don't have licensing in the UK, so one of the things I put in place was that agents who joined had to have at least 2 years experience, because
Mhm.
my theory, I love seeing theories, I don't read dozens and dozens of books, but the books I read I always take something from them, and they're great. And one of
Yeah.
the books I read, or one of the theories I was sent many, many years ago, was the theory of diffusion of innovation, where you have the innovators, then the early adopters, and then the early mass market, and the late mass market. And one of the things that rule says, or that theory says, is that you have to the early adopters have to see the innovators have success with that product or service before they jump in,
Right.
and then the early mass market have to see the early adopters and the innovators having success. And so the best way to get success is by having experienced agents that I don't have to train from scratch. I don't have to have rookies. Now, there is a certain point in time when you can have rookies, no question about it. But I think in the early days, you have to have that production in order to prove concept. And that's why we've grown so massively, is because of that production. Because I can now say to agents who are looking to join, look at this guy, look at this girl, look at what they've done. This is how they've done it. Just all you got to do, they've laid the crumbs for us. You just got to follow the same crumbs and be consistent and follow the process and trust the process. And you need a bit of resilience as well, probably, thrown in there as well. But yeah, and production has been the thing that has helped us with attraction for sure.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. We talk about to most real estate agents, and even stateside. And the thing I talk about the most is like, okay, your first bucket is selling houses, and that bucket is the buckets that's going to get you the opportunity for the attraction stuff, because nobody wants to follow somebody that's not doing anything. So showing that production is key, right?
It is, but then I'll just put a little swerve ball on this curveball. Is I wasn't in production when I started EXP,
Yeah,
so who was I? I mean, I say to people very often, I was selling an empty box, a completely empty box. It was gift wrapped. There was nothing inside it. Um, now we're selling a box full of tricks, but there's a hell of a lot of competitors out there all selling the same box kind of thing. So I think you have to stand out through that production, but you have to gain that trust. Trust in my marketplace. For me to start the business from scratch with nothing, we had no agents, no history, no brand, no nothing, and so it was about creating trust. And so by creating that trust alongside with production, it's very, very powerful.
I think it's an important point you're just making, because a lot of times when Russ and I are coaching people on attraction, we hear this all the time. Some of our agents are so resistant to even try. He's like, "Oh, who's going to want to listen to me? I don't really know what to say." And you're talking about an empty box that you were talking to people about. So, A, can you talk a little bit about what that looked like? Were people resistant to talking to you? Were they open to hearing? What were some of the things that you said to them to get their attention?
I didn't mention EXP. I would check in with people. How are you doing? What are you up to? I used, if people can go back, check me out on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. You'll see a lot of my posts. I still use LinkedIn as my sort of weapon of choice to communicate with people. In the early days, very, very early days, I created about 40 videos. And I spent 3 days just in a filming studio in my kitchen over here, just filming videos. And the videos were content based videos. It was, how do you generate leads in real estate? The best way to knock on a door.
yeah,
Um, it was stories about the day I turned the Connell's CEO down, what it was like to work for Easy Property, which is our big brand over here.
mhm,
And look, not everyone has these stories. I had these stories. I'm lucky enough to be able to say the day I turned the Connell's CEO down was kind of that got me more views than any other story I've ever had. But it was a story. That's the key point. It was a story about, this is what happened. When a large business approached to acquire my business, and people are interested in stories, and I just told stories and told stories and told stories and told stories, and never. And I think it was 80% stories, 20% EXP. I used the 80-20 rule a lot on a lot of stuff, and it was 80% not talking about EXP and 20% talking about EXP. And I just got loads of people contacting me just after about 6, 8, 10 weeks. I just started getting drip fed through, agents contacting me. What's this all about? I've been seeing your content. I've really enjoyed what you've been saying. How does this EXP thing work, by the way? And that was, yeah, that really helped me, that content marketing.
I love the concept of telling the story, and the story is what actually draws the attention, and then the attention becomes it becomes more of the like, hey, that's interesting. I'm fascinated by that, and then they want more, and when they reach, it's so much more powerful when they're reaching. Because if we're chasing them around, man, I tell people all the time, stop chasing people. You got to start throwing up a flag and say, hey, here's what I got. Who wants this? And sometimes the story is actually way more important than the other stuff. The story gets you the opportunity to be in their mind. And then when something happens in their business, we're like, you know what, maybe I do want to talk to this guy about something. Or maybe something changes in their world. And that's when you get the opportunity, they reach out to you.
Well, and I think LinkedIn's been an interesting place for us because and again, we're slightly different in the UK because people get pissed off with their bosses and, right,
Yeah.
that's it, I'm leaving. And then they go to LinkedIn and look for a job and I pop up. Hey, it's that Adam Day guy, or they remember me from whatever.
Yeah.
So it's that consistency of drip, 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 drip for 5 years now. I'm still getting people contacting me on LinkedIn and saying, hey, Adam, we spoke 4 years ago and that kind of thing. So I think that's interesting. I think there is you have to understand whether you're hunting or farming.
Right.
Your content marketing is your farming, and we all know that if you plant your seed, then you will get on a regular basis, and every 10 days you're going to get the crop, growing, and you can harvest every 10 days thereafter at the right time of year. And so
Yeah.
if you sow your seeds of, i.e., content marketing, you will have an evergreen list of people just contacting you randomly. But I think there is a place for hunting. We've not been so good at it in the UK. If I'm honest, the agents that are doing that are, I'll say hunting, it might be hounding. And that's kind of what can become
Yeah.
Yeah.
detrimental possibly to the brand. But by the same token, there's a lot of people that don't know about EXP in the UK. A hell of a lot of people. There's a lot of these branch managers who work in the middle of, I don't know, Norwich, where EXP is not very present, and they've probably never heard of us because they're happy in their jobs. They're not going on LinkedIn. They're not reading the industry press. They haven't been contacted by somebody. So, I kind of feel like sometimes we've got to put their eyes on it. We've got to make sure but we've got to put their eyes on it sensibly. I've heard all the training videos in the US, and would you be open to a discussion? And I think it's still those sorts of questions, but you have to frame it in a, I don't know. You have to be persistent, but it's a balancing act, isn't it, between persistency and consistency and hounding and I don't know. What do you guys do over there now?
Yes.
Well,
Frank,
I was going to say, I think the point you're making is so critical to being successful in this. Something Russ and I, we only met a little over 2 years ago, but we've always been on the same page, and we speak the same language. And a lot of the things that we talk about is meeting people where they are, and you touched that in the beginning, your 80-20 rule, and the fact that, you don't talk about EXP, and neither do we. It's all about, how can we help you in your business? And maybe it's a good fit, maybe it's not. But the whole point of this conversation is about you and how can we help you and can we help you? So, to your point, that's kind of what we try to kind of get that point across here is, it's about them. And you're really trying to give them a gift because this model was so revolutionary when it came out, kind of what you're talking about. People have a hard time kind of wrapping their head around it and grasping this concept of a true exit strategy. You mean I can own a piece of this company? Two questions that Russ and I ask everybody is, how many houses do you have to sell to get ownership of your current brokerage? And then how many houses do you have to sell to get back the company dollar that you paid to them? So we can really start understanding things and how they can change people's lives. These are the kinds of things we talk about. And I don't know if you want to expand on that, Russ.
Yeah, Adam, I think I'm not saying don't cold call. I'm just saying for most people, it's not the best fit. And I will say, it was funny. I had this guy named Mike Hellickson. I'll name names here. Mike Hellickson. He's a guy put together a group called Club Wealth, and he called me one day and asked me. He's like, "Hey, we want to grow Austin, my son's group." And he's like, "You're the guy, right? Like, where would you start? We're struggling right now." And I said, "Well, what are you looking for, man?" And he's like, "Well, dude, we're looking for eagles." And I'm like, "No, there's the problem, right? Like, eagles don't need you, man. Like." An eagle's sitting up in his little trees, up in his nest. He's hungry. He jumps off the branch and he's like, flies down to the water, grabs a fish, picks it up, goes back up in the branch, eats it like a corn on the cob, spits the bones at all the birds flying by. And he's like, dude, now I'm bored. Jumps up out of the nest and goes, beats the crap out of a couple other birds, flies back down and lands. He's like, man, now I'm hungry again. At what point in that cycle did that bird need you for anything? And the answer is none, right? I said, now, when a hurricane comes and blows that tree down, or a forest fire comes and burns the tree down, or a lumberjack comes and cuts the tree down, that's when the eagle's going to say, hey, I need to find somewhere else to park my nest, right? And you know, a lot of the times I tell that story and people are like, oh, I got a great idea, Adam. I'm going to go there with a chainsaw and cut the tree down. Like, there's not an eagle in the history of eagles that was thankful for their tree getting cut down. So you don't want to be the one cutting the tree down to make the eagle move, because you're less likely for them to come to you. And I think it's that add value first. And then when that person has to make that move, then you become that potential destination. And I think when you frame it like that, add value first and then be a resource, I mean, that's exactly what you're doing, which I love. So
I,
add
I
value.
would, yeah, I always like the. Someone told me many years ago that you think of when the film stars and the rock stars, the pop stars go and be interviewed on late night TV. They're always selling something. They're
Yep.
always selling something, but we never know what they're selling until right at the end when the presenter will say, "And here's Justin Timberlake's latest album." Da,
Yeah.
da, da. They've been asking him everything other than about his latest album, and
Yeah.
that's what content marketing is. Content marketing is giving information, getting information that's not related to what you're trying to sell, and then that's say that 20% at the end is what you're maybe trying to sell. The other thing that I always think is really important, and I think with RevShare, particularly agent attraction, is having an Olympic mindset. So I talk a lot internally in the UK about having an Olympic mindset. You have a 4-year mindset. And the reason I talk about this, we've got 2 Olympians who are kind of brand ambassadors for us in the UK. A guy called
Nice.
Roger Black, who lost to one of your guys in Michael Johnson in the 400 meters in Atlanta 1996. And he came
Wow.
second to Michael. And so he's an ambassador. And Steve Backley, who's a world record javelin thrower and was Olympian silver medalist as well. And so they kind of have been working with our agents as mindset coaches for the last couple of years. And they talk about having an Olympic mindset. And it's just that having that 4-year outlook. Don't start something now and then give up, because you're never going to make the roster. You're never going to make the bronze, silver, or gold, or even the final of that race. If you give up after 3 months or even 3 years, you've got to go all the way through to the 4 years, and then hopefully you're standing up holding the gold medal or the silver medal or the bronze medal, or even be in the final, because they're big achievements. So I think having a long-term Olympic mindset is really, really important as well.
That's phenomenal. So a question, because it triggered something to me. So obviously you talked about consistency, persistency. So do you have a plan? Do you have what it looks like for you and a methodology about how you're going to go about that? I mean, you're talking about a 4-year, obviously it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I think that's one hurdle people need to get over, right? A lot of this takes time. But the fact that you have a vision, what does that look like? I mean, you're building a heck of an organization now. You just hit the next level of beta, which is phenomenal. What
200.
what what is your goal? What does your next year, 2 years look? What's that look like?
I don't really put numbers on it. I try to put something intangible that I can't possibly achieve, because then I just keep. I mean, look, my wife says that's the wrong thing to do, because then I'll never be happy. I'll never be satisfied. But I will be happy and I will be satisfied one day when I'm on my deathbed, looking back on my life, having done all the things that I've done. So, I won't regret a single thing, because I've always done everything. I've always dived in. I work from home now, thanks to Glenn, and so
Yeah.
I see my son and daughter every day when they're coming from school, and send them off to school and going to their secondary school performances and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I don't. I mean, my one liner on my board here is to change estate agency so the corporation, the customer, and the agent all win. So that's on my whiteboard up there. So I see it every day. All 3 parties have to win. The corporation has to win, the customer has to win, but the agent has to win more importantly. And if the agent wins, everyone else wins. And I've got a whole bunch of big fat hairy goals. I think Google coined that phrase. Big fat hairy goals is stuff that you just don't think you'll ever achieve. So owning Hitchin Town Football Club, soccer club, is one of the things on my whiteboard. And one day I'm aiming for that. And man, if I got there, no one would ever believe me that I would get there when I was 16-year-old. But you've got to set those goals so ridiculously high that people will laugh at you if you think you'll achieve them. You've got to make them laugh at you. If you set that goal and someone laughs at you, that's the right goal. Because
So let's get tangible with that. Let's put some words to it, because I want to help you clarify that. Are we talking like estate sales sainthood here, like Saint Adam, the real estate dude. Like what? I mean, let's quantify that a little bit. That's a little mushy for me.
Yeah, I'm going for knighthoods. I'm going for owning soccer clubs.
Is it,
I'm all in on everything. Yeah, yeah.
I
Show me.
have a sword right over here if you need me to knight you. I don't know how I'm going to get it through TSA, but I'll, like we can try to get it to Miami.
Yeah,
I can,
yeah. But these if I told my friends that, they would laugh at me. They
yeah,
just wouldn't believe it. It's not, especially when I was 18. Maybe not now. They wouldn't laugh at me because
yeah,
I've managed to achieve things that I never thought I'd be able to achieve. But yeah, 20 years ago, yeah, they're laughing at you for even suggesting you might potentially one day be in line to get some sort of recognition from the royal family, or own a football club, or own a soccer club, or change an entire industry. In
yeah.
the UK, which is what we're trying to do, right? So
Yeah. I mean, I
goals.
think if you go back to Glenn in the early days, I would say, 2009, 10, 11, he's kind of like, hey, we're making a difference. We got a thing to go after. And then it's kind of interesting when you sit down and really talk to him. I was like, what was that moment when things really shifted and you're like, we really got traction, right? And I think you're in that same type of spot. He said, when I was reading through the book Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker, and he went to one of the Secrets of the Millionaire Mind intensives, and he got really, really clear on what he wanted. And then he realized the biggest realization was, I'm playing too small. And that's when he and Jason Guessing sat down, and he's like, Jason, we're playing too small, man. We got to think way bigger than this. And they put their heads together and they're like, what does this really look like if we could go just full throttle all in? And I think Glenn will say, Jason kind of sat there. He's like, that's a lot of, that's a big bite, dude. But the good news is those two guys right out of the gate, they played off of each other. Glenn had this vision, and Jason had the way to implement and dot the i's and cross the t's behind the stage, and that's when things really, really took off. And I would say, you could probably say, he would say, this is bigger than he expected.
Mhm.
And I think you're in that same trajectory, particularly in the fact that you have the ability to have that much influence within Europe versus just having your little pockets, not like just your little city. You've got the whole country, you've got the whole UK you can influence, which is pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, I think I have to credit the Americans, all of you guys for the mindset shift that I've had over the last 5 years. Because from Glenn all the way down to everyone I've spoken to, everyone I've met in EXPCon and in Vegas and Orlando the last few years, it's been I thought I had a big mindset in wanting to take over the UK with my old business back in 2006. Never ever did I think I could have a mindset of let's take over the world kind of thing. And
Yeah,
that's very American, I think, is that belief in yourself to be able to achieve huge things that no one thinks you'll be able to achieve. And I guess my mindset shifted to another increased level over the last 4 or 5 years because of that. Because of surrounding myself with people like you, it's been an amazing 4 or 5 years working with you guys.
well,
Well, it's funny. Every conversation we always start with mindset, right, Russ? I mean,
every
you know,
time. Yeah,
when you look at where you are, Adam, and some people, if they don't have the right mindset, may say, "Well, hey, there's only 600 people here. I don't know if anybody's going to buy into it." Or you could say, "There's only 600 people here, and the opportunity is massive, and I'm the one that's going to make the difference."
yeah.
And I think, depending on what temperature you take, is going to be the direction that you go in. Quite honestly. And you've taken this thing by the horns, and like I'm just going to grow this thing and be a monster here, and you're doing it, and that's inspirational to a lot of other people. And I think what you're doing, you're leading by example, is probably having a huge effect on the growth there, and why we are having such success there. So congrats to you, and hey man, you keep going and share that, share that mindset and share that momentum.
So, Adam, let me ask you a question. The people you surround yourself with are important. I mean, everybody, we say that all the time. Everybody's like, yeah, 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 yeah. Like, how did you go about getting in the rooms, or how did you go about connecting with the people that really made that difference? Because there's a lot of people out there who say, well, hey, Russ, well, like, that's great for him, but he probably is lucky he bumped into whomever, whenever, wherever, and then seized the moment. But a lot of times it's a matter of getting really clear, like, where do I want to go? And then find where are the people in the room that I need to get into. What does that path look like for you? Because I know it's a little bit more of a challenge being in the UK versus being in stateside.
Yeah, I mean, some would say I'm lucky. I think it was probably harder work for me in many ways because the people I knew in the industry were all directors of companies and companies are unable to join in the UK because there's loads of shareholders, and so you have it's a real minefield. It's possible, but it's very difficult. So the people I knew were people at the Connells Group. The Connells Group is owned by a bank in the UK. We're not going to get a bank joining EXP, or Connells Group being authorised to join EXP. It's just never going to happen. So, and all the guys that I knew were all working at that level. They were all working at board level for these huge multinational companies with hundreds of millions of pounds, being generated. They were all owned by banks or building societies or multiple shareholders or venture capitalists or private equity and stuff like that. So where I hung out was with people that were never going to join ever. So it was really difficult for me to infiltrate the sort of the branch managers. They're the branch managers. They're the listing agents, if you like, in your language, I suppose, that are likely to join EXP. So again, it came down to that social media. But what I also did was I did go to lots of events. I started going to more events. I went to more events, and I got myself on podcasts as well. Got myself on. A guy called Chris Watkin in the UK, the Watkin Sofa, who does sort of industry commentary. So got myself on his sofa. Again, all content marketing. I said to him, I don't want to sell EXP. We're going to talk about the self-employed model, and we'll mention all the different self-employed. We call it self-employed model here. And then I guess I got really good at following. I got really good at following the process, the three-way calls. The relationship building, the follow-up, the understanding that people don't join straight away and that they'll join when it's right for them. And I would always say at the end of the call, we try and book another meeting, but I say, look, I'm not going to pester you. I'm not going to push you. We're ready when you are, kind of thing. Because it's a big leap for some people, and I think that really helped. I remember one particular guy joined in the very early days, and probably 7 or 8 months after I first spoke to him, and he spoke to us and another well-known American franchise model that's here in the UK. And he said, do you know the reason I'm joining you, Adam, is because you haven't phoned me once in 6 months. You sent me a couple of messages just to check in, see how I am. He said, but this other lot are bombarding me. They are pestering me to the point of irritation. And so I'm not going to join them purely because you've just checked in with me a couple of times via WhatsApp. See how I am. You've never once tried to re-pitch me EXP. You've just said, how's it going? How are things, you're ready, we're ready when you are, kind of thing. And that's why I'm joining. So I got good at the follow-up as well, got really good at the follow-up in terms of not being too much of a pestering type of person. But also I say, three-way calls and all that good stuff that, again, you guys teach and Brent teaches and people like that.
Yeah, I think that's two huge ingredients in being successful here that we talk about is to think bigger than you ever thought before. And I know Russ was talking about that earlier, but if you can look beyond the four walls that you're surrounded by, there's a whole world out there. So thinking big is huge. And I think the second thing, the most critical thing to being successful here, plug into the platform and plug into the people. Exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about the people. The people make the company. I mean, let's be honest, right? So the fact that you can have these third-party calls with the people who are living it, doing it, there's nothing more powerful than that, in my opinion.
I agree. And I was getting on calls with US agents who had no financial interest in that person. We're going to get no financial benefit from that. But I won't name names because they'll start getting bombarded to do calls for other people. But they were, it was, if I felt they were the right person to help tell the story, be it that they were male, or be it that they were female, or be it they were a high producer and an icon, or be it they were a lifestyle kind of business person where they were picking kids up from school and only selling 1 or 2 a year and that kind of thing. It was, who do I tap into to help me tell that story? Because I have no story. I had no storytellers here in the UK. I had no social proof. I had nothing. And now we try and train that out into the UK and say, well, if you're talking to a big brokerage, then obviously get me on the call. If you're talking to someone who's only wants to sell 3 or 4 a year, don't get me on the call. There's no point in me being on that call. You need to find someone else who's having a similar success, in how the prospective agent wants to have that same success. So I think that really helped me as well a lot over the years.
Fantastic. So let's back you up a couple of years. If you were going to start over again, what would you do differently?
So I shouldn't say this. I hope Glenn doesn't watch this. Crikey. So no, I'm not going to say it, but you can read between the lines here, right? So there's a lot of agents who want to bring on the country leader in a country because they believe that the country leader is going to be the biggest agent attractor.
Yep.
I think now I'm a decent country leader. I'm a CEO type, profile in terms of I can dive into marketing and ops and tech and HR and growth and finance and the whole lot. I'm comfortable with all of that because I've had my own company before and been CEO of a company before. Um, so I love the country leader role. I love the European role, but I do wonder, had I not been country leader and I'd have been able to focus my full attention on attraction, if I'd have a double the number of agents than I personally have right now.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have been taken away with the finance role and the ops role and the HR role and the hiring role and the firing role and the managing everyone every day role and all of that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't. You say, what would I change? I wouldn't change it, but I'm just giving some advice maybe for others that may think that actually that this person would make a great country leader.
Yeah.
Actually, you might not want them as the country leader. You might want them as the first agent in the country with someone else being the country leader who has to then deal with all that stuff.
Right.
So I say I don't think I'd change that, but it's certainly something that I often think about. But then I wouldn't have been the country leader, so we might have had a different country leader, which might have been meant the model wasn't quite as good. I don't know. It's a difficult one, isn't it? But yeah, it's been something that I've often considered and thought about, over the years.
It's interesting, Adam, because we've just added a bunch of regional directors to EXP, 10 or so plus here. And it's kind of funny because some of the people that we're interviewing, I know they have organizations, right? And some of them have organizations, 100, 200 people. And I looked at each one of them and I said, is the ultimate goal to build your organization? Is that going to be your best long-term plan? And they're like, yeah. And I said, then you don't want this job. This job is 40, 50, 60 hours a week of working on everybody else's business. So if you actually are okay with detracting from your attraction and helping everybody else do the attraction and yours suffers in not that it has to be like that, but it certainly becomes secondary to what you're doing because it's just the nature of the beast, right? Like I want somebody in this role that's 100% dedicated to growing and helping people like you grow and helping people like Frank grow and helping people like the agents out on the ground grow it. And I don't want to go into a market where they're like, okay, well, why is Russ competing with me? I'm competing with Russ on this stuff. And we create this contentious type of competitive atmosphere with leadership, which we don't really want to do. So most of us will put our stuff on the back burner to put everybody else's stuff on the front burner. And I've convinced dozens of people to not take these jobs because sometimes that is the case. So the good news is you've been able to kind of find some balance. And it'll be interesting to see how you do that moving forward because it's always a delicate balance.
It's delicate. I mean, I was agent number one outside of North America. So you got to remember that when agents were joining in the UK, they had no one else to sign up with but me.
Right.
They had no choice. I was the only person they could sign up with. So again, people will say, "Oh, well, you got really lucky in that respect," and da 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 da. And because it was a test case and it was very early days, there was only 19,000 agents in the US at the time, so there wasn't as much interest in global and international as there is now. So that I don't do attraction anymore really. I try and help others do their attraction, and again, with the expanded role across Europe, then I'm going to be helping all the guys across Europe and India to try and I'm doing a revenue share session tomorrow actually, rev share boot camp tomorrow at 5 p.m. with Elizabeth Riley, 5 p.m. my time, and so I'm inviting all the European country leaders on and anyone from Europe who wants to come on that, and if they speak English, obviously, because me and Elizabeth don't speak anything other than English.
Yes.
And so that's my role, is to help others build their organization, whether that be through selling real estate or bringing other agents on board. I don't whatever they want to achieve, I'm there to try and help them achieve it. So yeah, that's what brings me joy now, is seeing people's lives change that I've had a tiny little impact on in that, whether that be just a little word of advice or a pep talk. I've become really good at pep talks recently, people talking people down off the edge. Because it is hard. You're running a business, right? There's ups and downs and everything in between, and the downs can be really down, and you need someone to bounce off of. And hopefully, I've been that person for a few people, and that's really satisfying. That's really the most satisfying, I think, is when someone's really down and they're on the edge and they're not sure what to do, and their lead gen tactics aren't working, and you just give them 2 or 3 little words of advice and a bit of a direction change, and all of a sudden you see their business go up, and you think, wow, that's awesome. I've had a little impact in that, so that's what gives me most satisfaction.
Well, I'll tell you, and this will be my last word on this, but Adam, it's like, your story is, people say you got lucky because you were number one. I also look at it as that was a huge challenge. All right, you didn't have anything to leverage. You didn't have the power of 88,000 people behind you. You didn't have all this attraction in a box. You just had you.
Yeah.
And you had to literally talk to somebody about a vision. I mean, so when I look at that and I hear your story and I see your success, I look at it as there really is no excuse for you not to be successful, meaning you, anybody else out there. I mean, you really didn't have much, but you still look what you've done. So to people out there that think it's not possible, or people out there that think you need to know everything, or that I'm just not well enough equipped, yeah, you are. You just got to go do it, and you just showed it and you proved it. And I applaud you, man. I applaud your effort and what you've done, and really remarkable. So, for
Absolutely.
me, um, I just really got a lot out of this time we spent together today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank
It
you,
is
Russ.
it is interesting that you are now in a model that is proven and sustainable and reproducible in your market. And I think that that lucky thing always cracks me up. It's like they only call you lucky because it worked. If it had
Yes.
failed, they'd call you a loser, right? So it's like people don't take the risk, and they're like, "Well, I didn't get lucky." Well, you didn't put yourself in a spot to get lucky, and take that skill and do that, and the risk that goes with it too. I mean, that was a bold move, and I just want to say congratulations to you for your role, and I want to say we appreciate you and your role. And Frank and I are here to help you and support you any way you need to. And if you want to throw us on the list for three-way calls, we could probably back you up on a couple of things too.
Fantastic. I'll take you up on that for sure. And I'll hopefully see you in Miami as well, I guess.
Yes,
We'll be there.
absolutely. Miami coming up end of October. We've got EXP Con, and that's where we connect. And if you guys are watching and seeing this podcast, anytime you see any of these big events, show up at those events because that's where you get to rub shoulders with people like Frank Panunto and Adam Day.
100%. One of the most important things you can do is go to events without a shadow of a doubt. For
So,
sure.
hey, Adam, Russ and I will be sitting in the podcast booth. Pop in and see us. We're going to be broadcasting live, and come on in and let's talk about it when you see us sitting in there.
I will do that. Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Look forward to seeing you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Good stuff. Thanks for having me. Cheers, guys.
You're quite welcome. See you, Adam. Appreciate it. This is us doing our thing, talking about attraction, how to take your business to the next level. And it's going to take people to do that. We're going to help you with that every single week. Putting out a new podcast, helping you understand what do you do, how you do it, why you do it, when you do it. Make sure we're telling the stories about how people did it right, did it well. And we're going to talk about some people that screwed it up too, because that'll be a lot of fun. All right. Look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. I'm out.
See you next week.
Bye.